Maybe, just maybe, they're trying to get women to become stronger and men to become weaker.
In this video, we're about to watch Patrick Bet-David actually break down masculinity. And he's going to be talking about how men have become weak over time. And I really want to break down some of my thoughts on this video, because I think there are a lot of things that he hits on that are really good points. But also I want to break down some of those like nuances, the granular pieces. I haven't watched this video yet, but I do have a lot of thoughts about masculinity because I've been on a journey of learning to find and own vulnerability. I've been trying to figure out how to really reject passivity and become somebody that owns my voice. I've had strong tendencies of being a people pleaser in my life. I've had to get free from that through lots and lots of counseling and being brutally honest within my life. I have a video actually on my channel about how I went from being broke, fat, to, being a millionaire, being very fit. And really, it was clickbait for how I got free from passivity and codependency and people pleasing and really stepped into masculinity. Well, recently, my wife put out a post and it got 2 or 3 million views on her reel on Instagram. And it's all these haters, all these dudes that have been calling me because of the post. And I'll show you guys so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But because of this post, all these guys are saying like my wife has gone through having sex with 1,000 dudes before she finally ended up with, her backup plan. And it's very interesting. I'm gonna give some thoughts here about that, but I wanted to show this video to kind of give some of a modern take on masculinity, the problem I see with what men are facing, why there's so much pain that they're going through. And so let's jump into it.
An article, the title was "The Most Dangerous Person in the World is a Young Man Who's Broke and Alone." Let me read some of the statistics that he has in this article. Men are more likely to use almost all types of illicit drugs at a higher rate than women. Thus, their higher prevalence of emergency room visits and inpatient substance abuse treatment. 93% of prison inmates are male, as are 98% of all death row inmates. Men are dramatically more likely to be homeless and for longer periods of time. Men now account for 41% of college enrollments, down from 60% in 1970. Men are twice as likely to overdose, 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide, and more than 9 times more likely to be incarcerated. A recent study revealed that 9 out of 10 mass violent attackers were male, and more than 2/3 of them were under the age of 35. Once again, the most dangerous person in the world is a broke and alone young male. Scott Galloway recommends 3 things. Start making money. We are living in a capitalist society. Get super strong. You want to be fit. You want to lift heavy weights and run long distances in your mind and in the gym. And last but not least, get out there, commit to meeting people, and quite frankly, try having sex. So interesting 3 points he makes, right? Start making money today, get super strong, and finally get out and commit to meeting people. But are we not stronger today than we were before? Let's take a look at some data to see if men are stronger today than maybe 20 or 30 years ago. There's 3 things I want to look at. I want to look at our bench press to before, squat, as well as your grip strength. They say your grip strength is a strong predicator of mortality in later life. So are we stronger today or before? Here's what the numbers tell us. So they surveyed 1,800 lifters ages 20 to 39 to see what the average bench press was 30 years ago versus today. And here's what they came up with. What the average man could bench press 30 years ago versus today. 30 years ago was 240 pounds versus today 187 pounds. Squat was 277 versus today 225. So when you look at this data, how do you process it? Grip strength, bench, squat, why are we looking at this data? Maybe, just maybe, they're trying to get women to become stronger and men to become weaker. Maybe I'm wrong. I will tell you, at our Vault conference we had with a couple thousand people there, business owners, entrepreneurs, I challenged everybody to go do a certain questionnaire the first night, and the next day come and share their breakthrough with everybody. While I'm going through everyone, a lady sitting right here, 7 rows right there, she gets up and she says, "Patrick, I have to tell you my breakthrough last night." I said, "What is it?" She said, "For the last 20 years, all I've been trying to do is compete against men to prove that I can make as much money as they make. I'm strong, I don't need them, I'm independent. I run a very successful salon, I do very well for myself. Everybody that works with me makes great money. I'm very, very, successful right now to my friends, to my peers." I said, "Okay, and where are you going with this? What's wrong with that?" She said, "The breakthrough I have yesterday is men are not the enemy. I want a husband. I want to get married. I want to have a family." How interesting is that, right? The person she wanted to beat the entire time, now she wants to marry. How many endless videos can we see with women in their 60s who bought into the feminist movement to make men and women equal are sitting there saying, I regret making that decision because I'm single, never been married, don't have any kids, and I'm alone. And I wish I would have married men. I wish I would have had kids because I wouldn't have been alone today.
So this is very interesting because obviously looking at it from a Christian lens, there's a little bit different stuff. I look at the numbers honestly and I'm like, sweet. I'm doing okay with like squat, bench and all that different stuff, which not the most important. I don't think that's, super telling of a man. I think that there are a lot of men that are agile, fast, strong, but it's like, well, what happens if you lose your limbs? Are you less of a man? What happens if, you get in some sort of injury, you can't do any of those things? Does it make you less of a man? It's very interesting because some of the greatest men I've ever known in my life, they have a level of strength that's internal and not just external. And I think sometimes what we see is so many pendulum swings because of the feminist movement. We see so many men that are like, feeling caged up. And so they're following people like Andrew Tate. They're trying to look for something to give them permission to be masculine, to be a man. Obviously, testosterone as a hormone makes you not aggressive in a dangerous sense, in a bad sense, but it makes you a protector. Men originally were meant to be protectors. And I think you as a man, your strength in the wrong side of things is being used against people to hurt people. And I think strength used in proper context as healthy men is a form of protection. And I do feel like in your family, a part of your role as a man is protection. It's to protect your wife, to protect your kids. Originally that was our role. And I think there's been such an attack on the polarity between men and women. In the name of equality, we've made ourselves the same. And that's like equality in value and equality in role is very different. Men and women are equal in their worth and their lovability, but they are not equal in their roles and the manifestation of the femininity and masculine. And so he's bringing up some really interesting points here already. As a Christian, I don't believe that you should go out there and start having sex and all of a sudden that makes you more of a man. I honestly think that your restraint and your ability to control your desires, your ability to control your cravings, your lusts, those different things. And not that we should always be fighting this war against ourselves, but while we're learning to own our identity in Christ, I think it's important to manage some of those things externally to protect people. And I think that is a masculine trait. Let's jump back into it.
Next point is a lack of male role models in a boy's life or man's life. So if you look at some data here in 2019, some 15 million children in the United States were living with a single mother. That's about 5 times more than those living with a single father. As divorce rates rise and family courts continue to favor mothers, the amount of boys living without a dad will continue to grow. So why is this so important? Well, there are certain things I can tell my boys that my wife can't tell them, period. I can go tell my boys we're going outside and we're playing, they have to listen to it. I can go tell my boys you have to read 20 pages a day. They may tell Mom, I'm good. I don't need to read today. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. There's just certain things my dad could have told me that my mom couldn't tell me. There's a very, very big value that men have in a boy's life, but the more divorces we get, and the more fatherless homes that we have, men don't know what it is to be a man's man. Matter of fact, let's look at a complete different angle. Most kids who go to school, most teachers are women. Most teachers are not men. So just recently I had my kids watch Captain, the documentary about Derek Jeter, and there's a scene in this documentary where Derek Jeter is drafted by the Yankees. His dream becomes a reality. He always wanted to be a shortstop for them because his dad was a shortstop. He goes, but he's not doing well. He's making errors, he's making mistakes, he's doing all this stuff, and he's having anxiety attacks. He's depressed almost, and he makes a phone call to his house. Mom's talking to Derek, and mom says, son, why don't you just come home? The father says, when I heard my wife saying this to Jeter, he says, I told her, don't tell him that. He can't know that's an option. So now, let's replay this. Say the father's not in a picture. Say the mom's able to convince Derek Jeter to come home because no mother wants to see their son suffer. And she's witnessing her son Derek suffer. But the father says, that's what builds character. Let him go through it. If that doesn't happen, you don't have a 5-time World Series champion, few $100 million, one of the greatest Yankees of all time, 3,400 hits. If that simple call by the father wasn't made, you and I may not know who Derek Jeter is. So what's the point here? So maybe men today need stronger role models to challenge them and to show them It is okay to go through challenges. It is okay to have to fight through. This is a part of becoming a man's man, and it's natural.
I just want to comment on this real quick because I think that there's some truth to this. It's like if we're going into the Christian sense, we're looking at like, where do you get your identity? Do you get your identity in what you do? I think in this sense, what Patrick Bet-David's kind of talking about is like Derek Jeter would have never been who he was made to be. Let's say he was made to be this epic baseball player with the influence and the performance that he had. Sometimes I think in our culture, in Western culture, we value performance as the identity of a person. Like, who are you? It's like, oh, I was made to be. And then we watch all these movies, like these men become heroes. And we're like, yeah, I want to find my hero journey. So we're like, what am I going to be extremely good at? We're like, we're trying to find our identity is, am I an incredible business owner? Am I an incredible sports athlete? And there's all this pressure on like, your identity is what you do. I don't think that's fully true in our lives. I do think actually it's father's role as a role model to bestow masculinity, to bestow identity. But it's really important that we as men know that we're loved before we perform. So there's actually, I wonder if that phone call from Derek Jeter's dad was, hey, listen, son, I love you no matter what. And you could fail over and over again. You could leave, you could quit, and I'll love you. But I know I can't let you do that if this is important to you. Is this important to you? Is this what you want in your heart of hearts? It is? Okay, well then you'd be violating your heart if you leave. And I can't let you violate your heart. Your heart is the most important thing to you. And in your heart of hearts, not a triggered identity, not a false identity. A lot of people are like, you can't trust the heart, it's deceitful and wicked. That's actually a poor translation of scripture. But what I'm saying is the new heart, God took away our heart of stone, gave us a heart of flesh. A true father is going to seek out that heart of flesh that's in a son and is going to help him stay accountable to what's in his heart of hearts and not live for anything else. So let's say it was his heart of heart's ambition to be an incredible baseball player. Well, then it is a father's role to step in there and call him into that role and identity. But let's say Derek Jeter was doing that just for his dad's approval his entire life, hates baseball. Well, that's a different story because I've seen that. And if that father were to be like, I can't let you quit, well, now it's more about that dad. And so that dad is actually not doing a good job as a role model and bestowing identity to Derek Jeter. He'd be calling him into something that's going to help his own ego and his own deficits. And it's not going to be a true father's role in those moments. So, but what Patrick is highlighting here is that men are without true role models. So there's so many dads that are passive. There are so many dads that lay down their role as fathers that fail to help men step into their role as men and to bestow that identity of sonship into men. And even Paul in scripture said that you have so many teachers, you don't have many fathers. I was telling my spiritual father yesterday, I find it so hard to tell you about the areas where I'm failing or things are difficult. I feel this tendency or this like compulsion to tell you that things are great, that things are going super well, that business is great. I almost can feel my walls that things are hard. And it was interesting because it was another reminder that I just needed a safe fatherly figure to tell me that it doesn't matter. I needed someone to tell me the business doesn't matter. But if it's in your identity and your heart of hearts to go after those things and you feel God on it, then yes, you have to. And you have to honor your word and you have to honor your heart because that's going to build trust with yourself. And so those are some elements of fathering that I think are required, but it's something that real men need in order to step into their masculine identities. Let's keep watching this.
Next point is the walking on eggshells society that we're living in today. And what do I mean by walking on eggshells? People are afraid of offending today, okay? So when you're afraid of offending, you don't want to share your opinion, and the way people learn who you really are is by sharing your opinion and feelings about different issues. Now, in our family, I talk about 4 things with my boys. We lead, we respect, we improve, we love. Respect, let's talk about that. If you constantly spend your life disrespecting people, you're eventually going to be alone and not successful in business because it doesn't work out if you want to disrespect everybody. People are not going to stick around in a work environment if you're disrespecting them. People are not going to be with you friendship-wise if you're constantly disrespecting them and judging them. And quite frankly, you're going to be by yourself. Now, offending is a different story. Today, they're trying very, very hard to cause men to be careful with their thoughts and what they say. And God forbid you say something that's going to offend somebody, you're walking on eggshells. I don't know many leaders that I call leaders who walk on eggshells that are not comfortable sharing their thoughts on different issues. They share their thoughts, but they get better at their soft skills to know how to deliver their messages better. That's something you're going to get better at for the rest of your life. But walking on eggshell society where you're sitting there by yourself, not really sharing your thoughts, it's as if you don't exist. You're non-existent. And that's just not what men do.
This is one of the things that I just I learned about people pleasing, is that people pleasing, walking on eggshells, that's actually you taking over responsibility for other people's fragile emotions. So the people pleasing premise, like the belief system behind people pleasing, is that I have to constantly be looking out for somebody else's shame, somebody else's triggers, and preemptively see them happen before they come in order to make sure that people aren't triggered or offended. And that's people pleasing. I want to make sure that I don't say anything to rock the boat. And then they think that that's true love and true connection towards people. But what happens is they end up shutting down their own heart and voice, and they don't allow people, they actually enable people to keep living in fragile emotions. I think a true man is respectful and loving and kind, but also doesn't react to the fragile emotions of somebody else. They respect them. They respect if somebody is offended. They have compassion for if somebody is offended. They're not intentionally trying to offend people, but they're also not steering away from offense and shutting down their heart in the process. A real relationship and real connection exists when I say my heart matters and your heart matters. And now let's have a conversation about that. It is mutual respect. Mutual respect doesn't mean mutual agreement. It means I value you as a person as much as I value myself as a person. Let's do this thing.
The next thing I want to talk to you about is competition. Society wants to convince you that competition is not healthy for you. By the way, the same people that are selling you that are those who lost, who don't know how to handle it. The reality of it is socialist boys have limited options. Capitalist men have unlimited options in every aspect of their life. Where they live, where they travel to, where they eat, who they date, anything you want. They have an unlimited supply of options, and unfortunately, those who don't compete don't like the fact that you have more options. You know, when I was 14 years old, I was playing in this basketball association for troubled teenagers. I'm in a league with Mara Salvatrucha, with Black Diamonds, with, you know, the Sureños, 18, with the Blood Crip, all these guys. And one day we're in this tournament and only 5 of our players showed up, and we played against a team that had a full lineup, and we lost by 104 points. They give us this trophy that my dad has till today, a last place trophy. And he puts it right there and he says, you know why we have this trophy? To remind you how bad you lost. It's almost like, experience the pain, son. And I'm like, dude, throw that thing away. He says, no, you lost by 104 points. Look at the psyche of a father. A mother would say, why would you do that to him? That hurts his feeling. My dad's like, that's exactly what he needs. The pain of a loss makes a man come back and improve. Makes him stay up late at night practicing while everybody else is sleeping. Makes this guy say, one day I'm going to prove to the world that I'm a winner. So, going back to you, there's nothing wrong with competing. There's nothing wrong with losing. As long as you keep showing up and competing, eventually you're going to get your shot. But you're better off being a capitalist than being a socialist.
One thing I just want to say here is that this is contrary to the way that Jesus taught. And, you know, you look at disciples, he didn't actually shame them for wanting to compete for sitting right next to Jesus when they were like, you know, who's going to sit at your right hand? And he was like, well, in order to be first, you have to be last. And he's like, the most humble and the most loving will be first. And he did set up basically a competition in a sense, but he was like, I want to make the rules backwards for you though. And sometimes what I see though is men do become doormats. What I hear Pat saying here is like, don't become a doormat, don't become a socialist. In that he's saying like, in order to win in business and win in society, like you really do have to have a good competition, a healthy reaction to your losses. And the thing that he says though is you need to prove to the world your greatness. I don't agree with that. You know, that proving that you're a winner, it's coming from an external validation source, which is if I finally do this, I'm a winner. And the truth is that I think our greatest creativity and creation and entrepreneurship in our lives will come from actually owning our identity and functioning from identity, not for it, not trying to prove I am something, but going, I am something, therefore I do. And I think that identity has to be bestowed by God. It can't be proven by your behaviors. I see this in so many men shame themselves into good behaviors. I think what this could turn into with this, if this was taken all the way to its full extent of the advice and wisdom he's giving, is we would end up whitewashed tombs again, high performers that are dead inside. And I don't think that's fair to men. And I don't think I don't think families need more men that are high performers that don't have the capacity to connect with their children and love them in any state that they're in. I think we're called to unconditional love. In order to do that, we have to learn to partner with unconditional love ourselves and function from a place of self-love, even as men.
Final thoughts here. Look, as you're going through the process from being a boy to a man, or from a man to a man's man, many times you're by yourself. Say you don't have a father figure. Say you don't have a strong male role model. You don't know who to talk to. You're trying to please everybody. Your mom's telling you, well, that's not the way to behave. And you don't have another man to bounce off the idea to think if it's a good idea or not. You're like, okay, I'm going to please my mom. I'm going to please my teacher, who's a woman. I'm going to please my girl, who's a female. I'm going to please my, girlfriend's mom. You're trying to please everybody, and you're becoming less and less and less of a man. And you're in the car by yourself saying, man, I'm losing my identity. I don't even know who I am. Then you lean towards making bad decisions. Look, take a time out away from everybody and sit down and say, what do I stand for? What are your values and principles? What do you stand for as a man? What do you want to do with your life? What kind of a leader you want to be in your life? You. Who do you want to be? Not what everybody's trying to force you to become. Who do you want to be?
So this is so awesome. And Pat is dropping some huge wisdom that a lot of men need, right? This is a level of fathering that I think is so helpful. And honestly, too, I think I agree with a lot of his points. But if you look at the way Pat kind of talks about his advice, his wisdom, and he gives it to his channel, to his audience, to his viewers, he's really focused on making sure that people know how to show up in life and that people are productive and they're healthy, they're contributors to society. Those are all really good things, but I think at the heart of hearts, he's probably still lacking fathering himself. Like a dad, like he's gone through so much pain and so much hard stuff in his life, so much trauma, that there's a level of toughness he's had to carry. But at the same time, are we building a culture around wars and battles that need to keep happening? Or are we building a culture of people that know how to show up with love and care and tender affection, that know their identities, that are strong, yes, but only step into strength when it's called upon them in different moments? Like, do I have to live with walls? Do I have to live in reaction to shame on a daily basis because that drives me further and further ahead in the marketplace or in athleticism or something else? I don't think those are necessarily the signs of a man. But what he's ending with in this video is so good, where he's like, what do you want? Not what does anybody else want? What do you want? I think what he's calling out is like, what is in your heart of hearts to do? Because in the end, being a heart-led man and being somebody that has values and principles from the heart, not from your shadow self, not from your triggered self, not from the part of you that is living outside of your identity, the part of you that is connected to hope, connected to joy, connected to your identity, connected to a love that God has for you in all experiences that you've been in, even in your sin, that love that he has for you, connected to that place, connected to that hopefulness, connected to that joy, that identity. What do you want? And I think every man has to ask that question of themselves. And I'd also think that it's important to find men in your life that you can get around, be vulnerable, talk about the hard things, people that can hear you, understand you, and call you into your identity and hold you accountable, not just to not sinning and not, blowing up your life, but holding you accountable to who you are, behaviors, thought processes, belief systems, identity, healing, so that you can step into greater levels of connection, greater levels of health within your life. Hope this was a valuable video. If you like videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. You'll see a bunch of other content on here about entrepreneurship, life, things like that. And honestly, let me know in the comments your thoughts about this video and if you like content like this. Thank you guys. I'll see you on the next one.